Good afternoon, everybody. This is pretty much going to be my own knee-jerk, not very well thought out reaction to the guilty verdict on all counts for Derek Chauvin for murdering George Floyd, which he did, and he deserves the punishment that he's going to get. And I have no issues saying that. And probably I'm just making this video, to be honest, as somewhat like clickbait, just to, pretty much an excuse to make a video, that people will watch. I'll be honest about that, but I do believe justice was served. However, that does not excuse the politicization of this crime that was committed. And of course, without saying, does not excuse the rioting and the looting and so forth that have been linked to this. Derek Chauvin is a murderer, and he deserves whatever punishment is coming to him. And nobody can deny that at least he is guilty of manslaughter. And I believe that under the law and the way that the law was set up, with more or less a fair trial, he was found guilty of murder deservedly. However, that does not have any bearing on anything else in America and the world, anywhere. This has nothing to do with white versus black, or black versus white. This has nothing to do with race. We don't know anything about, as far as I know, about Derek Chauvin's views on race, any of his political views at all, if he had any biases against George Floyd because he was black. We have zero information about that. And that's how it should be. This case should have been tried on the merits of the case and not in any type of a political climate, which we all have to be honest, there was obviously a very strong political climate. There were people, it wouldn't be, well, this we can't say yes or no, but it wouldn't be inappropriate to wonder as to whether or not the jurors were afraid of the consequences that would happen to themselves and their families if they did not render a guilty verdict. There's no question that people reacting to this case did a lot of wrong things. There's no question that Maxine Waters' opinions on this matter are wrong and deserve censure, and probably won't be getting it. And I think that it's unfair to see everything in the realm of race. And this is an issue that's really at hand right now in America. Are we judging people by the color of their skin or by the content of their character? there is a very strong movement, what's called the critical race theory movement, or what calls itself the anti-racist movement, that does not want us to live in a colorblind society. And this is really a time of reckoning that America has to ask itself. Where is it appropriate to be colorblind and where is it not appropriate to be colorblind? Because I'll be honest, and I guess most people would consider me a fairly conservative individual from the American type of conservatism, which is really a type of classical liberalism. But we have to recognize the merits and the problems with both sides of this argument. My personal view, which again this is just me, is that America on the federal level must be colorblind as a collective. Certainly the justice system must be colorblind. That doesn't mean to say that society should be forced to be colorblind, meaning there is a balance. There is, but I don't believe color or race or really any real accidents of birth should be the deciding factor in these things, as much as culture, celebrating different cultures, recognizing diversity and celebrating diversity, but also recognizing that the diversity is quite a lot more diverse than you might ever imagine. Meaning, it's not a monolithic black community any more than it's obviously not a monolithic white community, or even, different religious communities. There's no monolithic Christian community, Muslim community, Jewish community, Hindu community, Buddhist community, even quite minority religions like Sikhism, various neo-pagan groups, the Norse pagans, this one, that one, Confucianism, Shintoism. All of these communities contain a tremendous amount of diversity within those communities. And these are worthy objects of study that we should embrace and talk about and be familiar with as educated people. But we can't just go and say, everything white is bad any more than we would ever dream to say everything black is bad. But there is that push from the left. And I was listening to Sean Hannity right after, shortly after he announced the verdict, and he was talking about it. He had one caller who said that you have the anti-white movement that'll never be happy until they totally destroy the society and get to do whatever they want, etc., etc. And listening to that, my response would be, the anti-white community is also the anti-black community. By which I mean, nobody comes out a winner with racism. And so much of what is called anti-racist and critical race theory is racist. Now, I do believe there's a difference between racism and bigotry. There are many different forms of bigotry, which will include racist bigotry. But I believe there is also racism that's not necessarily bigoted, and might even see itself as pride in a particular race and so forth. But it's ignorant to speak by these terms, because really there is no racial collective. There's no white culture any more than collectively any more than there is a monolithic collective black culture. There are many different cultures and also individuals, and that's the most important minority, is the minority of one. And the irony of the attacks against Christianity as being a white man's religion are ridiculous, because obviously Christianity comes out of the Middle East and was embraced in Africa before it was embraced in Europe. Meaning you had African churches long before the church really took root certainly in the northern parts of Europe. And the ideology of Christianity and of Islam is colorblindness. And it's not imposing a white man's religion on people. You go to Africa, there are plenty of Christians. And it's not just because missionaries went there in the 1800s. Christianity is an ancient religion in Africa and in sub-Saharan Africa. So this idea of it being, the white man imposing this religion, and then, the whole argument of the Nation of Islam, which is ironic that, Muslims were just as active in the slave trade as any other group was, and still are to this day. Meaning in Islam, slavery is considered to be as socially acceptable. In certain parts of the Islamic world that maintain the older approaches to things. So I believe that it's really time for us to overcome a lot of these things. I saw something just fascinating, at work. It was a little bit hard to believe, but one of my coworkers came to talk to me, say hello to me, and he's an African American fellow, and he was a spiritual seeker, and he says he seems to have found a religion that works for him, and it's Norse paganism. And that is a white man's religion, right? And that's why a lot of white racists are drawn to that religion. Again, not the vast majority, I would say, of people who identify with that faith are not racist. But you do certainly have a large minority within the Norse pagan community, particularly those who might call themselves Odinists or Wotanists for sure, who are, of this mindset. And then you have a black man joining that faith, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I just find it fascinating, it'd be kind of almost similar in a way to a white man, joining the Nation of Islam, and the fact that that's possible in America, I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think there probably are some white people in the Nation of Islam. Certainly, Nation of Islam does not say that you can't, that they are anti-white just as a as a race in and of itself, and they certainly teach and at least publicly preach that they care about the oppressed, impoverished white people just as much as their fellow black people. So but is that ideology, though, that is very much Malcolm X's ideology that was before his Hajj, where his belief was, it was articulated in a very interesting way and an intelligent way of how the black man should not feel any need to be judged by white values and in the realm of white culture. And he was seeking a sort of a black Zionism type of an idea of, going back to Africa and being separatist from the white culture. And I just don't see that personally as appealing. I can understand, because I don't believe, not because, I'll correct myself. I understand the appeal of what he said, and I understand the ideology. But I don't believe that America, as an ideal, is a white ideal. I don't believe that the U.S. Constitution is a white man's document just because it happened to be written by white males. Were there racial issues in it as it was originally framed? Yes. Were those issues corrected? Yes. But they were designed to be corrected. There's a lie that keeps getting repeated that, the framers of the Constitution believed the black man was only 3/5 of a white man. And that's not the point of the 3/5 compromise at all. Because it was the racists who wanted to count the black slaves, or slaves of any other race, 100%, but not give them the right to vote. And it was the abolitionists, although that term wasn't in vogue yet, who wanted a slave of whatever race, since they were denied the right to vote, to count as 0. Because the whole idea is that the population receives a representation by virtue of the population levels. And so therefore, if you're counting slaves who don't have the right to vote, you're disenfranchising them. You're empowering their masters. And so this whole idea that the 3/5 compromise was racist, it was racist in the opposite way. Meaning, the less racist thing to do would be not to count slaves at all, and only to count free people of whatever race they are. And again, it's not a racist thing as much as an anti-slavery thing. And the issue that I have, I think the greatest issue that I have with the left is their orthodoxy. And that's ironic of me as a person who's, religious expression is often called orthodox. And I believe that is an apt term. But that's my religion, right? And the insistence that whatever is in vogue right now by the woke culture is all that there ever could be. And that if you dare question this, you deserve to be canceled. That is a stunting belief. And I sometimes wonder if that's not by design. Meaning, if you know the real history of the Democrat Party and the current beliefs of the left, there seems to be a continuation of the old racism of the Democrat Party. And that it's being framed in a new way. Meaning, I have no doubt that personally, I agree, yes, there's institutionalized racism in America, but the institutionalized racism is that of the Democrats. I believe that they want to defund police, etc., not to protect blacks, but to really continue their genocide against the black people. They commit genocidal lynching of black babies in the womb. And the ideology of Planned Parenthood, which they're finally now kind of apologizing for and confronting, is in eugenics and racism. And it's really, it's totally apt to say that it's about lynching black babies in the womb. And it's totally apt as well to say that it's lynching, just like we said, that the Nation of Islam are concerned with the plight of the impoverished white as well. The elitist left hate impoverished whites just like they hate blacks. And so they're lynching those white babies in the womb too. It's rooted in this type of elitism of that we're better, and you folks, you shouldn't be breeding because you're kind of messing up the gene pool. This is a belief that Al Gore, for example, has expressly echoed. I'm not making this stuff up. So and I got in trouble on Facebook because I said the left sees poor whites as N-words. I crossed out, the words. But that's true. That's how the Democrats look. They look at poor whites with the same contempt, if not more contempt, as they do large swaths of the black community. And there's bigotry and hatred that comes from the left that cannot be understated. And that's why they embrace these types of things. They want to defund the police because they know it's going to encourage more black-on-black crime. It's a genocidal act against the black communities, because by and large, the vast majority of black people are not being killed by police. Not only that, how often is that a black policeman killing a black person? Is it because he's racist against blacks? And not only that, but people get killed by police. Innocent people get killed by police. Guilty people get killed by police. All kinds of people get killed by police. There's zero indication that race is a factor. But if it is, where is this happening? Where are police killing the black people? In the Democrat-run cities. You don't see this happening in a rural area. You don't see this happening. I mean, does it happen in rural areas? Yes, there was just recently a case where a black man was killed in his own home in a rural area by a black police officer. The victim was armed and was threatening the police, but he felt that he was defending his own domicile, and he was probably right and probably justified. Although that's not the way that you handle confrontations with the police. The best thing to do probably in a case like that is to submit to arrest, and you sue for wrongful arrest, and you hit the jackpot there. Instead this man died unnecessarily. And it seems that there were some mental issues and other things with this story. But with a lot of this all being said, etc., it's worthwhile, I think, to reflect on these issues and try to overcome the racial focus of these stories, because I don't think the Derek Chauvin case had anything to do with race or anything to do with police in general. It was one man who did something wrong. I think we can all agree that George Floyd did not deserve to die, but it has to be looked upon on an individual basis instead of systematic, because the politicians are going to abuse these types of cases that are not related for their gain. That's the way they're acting. That's the way they roll. And who loses in these cases, by and large, are the black communities that are, where their own communities are destroyed. And quite often the people doing this looting and rioting are not the local people there. They're bussed in by white elitists. Many of them themselves are wealthy white elitists who are just, going out and doing something that's fun, and they're committing crimes. And there's no justification for that. And anybody who does that should face justice as well. There's no justice in some rich white kid going and looting in a black neighborhood because a black guy got killed by maybe a black cop. It's ridiculous, and it has to stop. But this is what's going on. So this pretty much my take on this issue. We have to look at it as an individual case and not as some kind of a wide systematic, and it cannot be used as an excuse neither for defunding police in general, neither for looting and committing other crimes. Derek Chauvin committed murder, and he's most likely going to face some really bad situations for this. Police in prison never have it well, meaning police who committed crimes are targets. Unless they're in a particular type of prison, their lives are in danger. I know this firsthand. A particular inmate who was a police officer, and kind of a similar case. He was a man who was on painkillers, and it affected him, and he was on drugs, and he wound up committing a murder, domestic abuse type of case. Wound up in a particular prison, a tough prison, and almost got killed. And then sent to another prison, almost got killed. He couldn't handle it anymore. He wanted to commit suicide, and I'll be honest, thankfully he got transferred to the prison where I work, which is a mental health prison, and spent time in the mental health part of our prison, and it saved his life. And in our prison, there's more than one former police officer, and in general, at least where I work, they're not targets the way, and anybody who's a target just kind of gets picked on verbally, but they're not attacked physically because it's a more safe environment. But you know what? I have to tell you something related to this whole race issue. The prison where I work, unlike probably most prisons, the majority of inmates are white. And I have had black inmates tell me that they feel safer in a prison where the majority of inmates are white than in a prison where the majority of inmates are black. Think about that, what that means. It's difficult, and it doesn't fit with my hopes for a colorblind society and so forth. But that is a serious issue that has to be addressed. So that's all I have to say right now. I think that's an appropriate way to end this video. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. I'd like to hear, if someone can present me some indication that Derek Chauvin is a racist, and that he targeted Mr. Floyd because of his race. I'd like to hear it, because as far as I know, it was not something that was brought up in the trial, and I don't believe it should have been brought up in the trial. I think the way it was handled, at least in-house, was more or less fair, other than perhaps there should have been a venue change, a few other things. But I'd like to continue this conversation. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. See you later.